Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. The dollar strengthens as President Trump announces a 90-day pause on some tariffs except for China, who will now be raised to 125%. Trump's decision comes as China increased its tariffs on U.S. goods to 84%. And 130 people have been killed after a roof collapses at a nightclub in the Dominican Republic. To our top story, and President Donald Trump has announced there will be a 90-day pause to tariffs for everyone except China. Writing on Truth Social, the US president said, based on the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets, I'm hereby raising the tariff charged to China by the United States of America to 125%, effective immediately. At some point, hopefully in the near future, China will realize that the days of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. Just after the announcement, the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent held a press conference outside the White House to respond.
I was out telling other countries, don't retaliate. And I think what a lot of people are missing here is that the levels that were put out last Wednesday are a ceiling. So if you don't retaliate, that is a ceiling. So we've been overwhelmed with the response to come to DC and negotiate.
To discuss this and all of today's stories, I'm joined by media strategist and former editor-in-chief Michael-Jabri Pickett and Arabiya journalist Jennifer Bell. Thank you both for joining me. And there we are. We just know the news now that things have changed on the tariff front. Kind of a total 180, if you want to say, from President Donald Trump. He always said the tariffs were non-negotiable. But here we are, a pause for everyone except for China. What do you make of this?
So the first thing I would say is, if you go back and you look at that clip, didn't you get the sense that the Treasury Secretary was almost like the adult in the room, saying, we have a child, don't retaliate, you're the grown-up, you have to make sure that you're acting in a mature manner. And I wonder if maybe the nations that didn't respond, and there were a couple that said we were going to sit and wait. And I wonder if maybe they were thinking, maybe we'll just see if he'll actually follow through or if he'll do just what he did. And there had been, just a couple of days ago, there had been talk about a 90-day pause for a couple of hours before they say, no, that won't happen. But here we have it. It's almost, I wonder, now we can reverse engineer, right? We can look at this and we can say, this is what he's been saying all along. He's wanted people, and he mentioned this last night, to essentially come in and kiss the ring. And he wanted that to happen. And so now he can be, again, the man at the center of the storm, who can listen to all the different countries that are approaching him. He can negotiate, but he can also say, this will happen or this won't. This is what he's built for. This is what he loves to do.
I think you're absolutely right. I think this is what kind of makes Donald Trump tick. But we obviously just spoke there, Jennifer, about the fact that he's had calls, people want to negotiate. Trump's a businessman. So last night, the president was on stage. He boasted that the phone hasn't stopped ringing and all these countries have been calling him. He was right, wasn't he?
He was, and I mean, I think there was no one around the world who didn't put their head in their hands and thinking, what's he saying now? And another headline for journalists, but I mean, it just seemed quite arrogant at the time of Trump bravado, standing by what he's done. But, you know, he has been right. You know, countries have come, I think something like more than 70 countries have come around the table and they've earned themselves some temporary reprieve.
Yeah, but I do think that once again, we're just talking about a pause here. And I think we still have to note that markets have been volatile. This is a pause, but the uncertainty continues, really.
Well, and this is what we've learned about, well, throughout the past 100 years about markets. They need predictability, they need stability so that there is a way forward, even for an American investor. If you want to build a plant in the States, are you comfortable now building it? And all this does is it extends, I think, the uncertainty for another 90 days at least, right? It could, of course, be extended again. But I think that there is that the markets right now need the stability, and I don't know that they're getting it. What is nice, though, is that Trump is coming across as maybe a little bit flexible. Maybe this is Trump 3.0. If the first term was Trump original, and then the first 80 days or so was Trump 2.0, this could be Trump 3.0, where maybe he's recognized, I have to listen to the Republicans who are in Congress, the other Republicans who are starting to go on TV to talk about maybe this isn't the right way forward. And then, of course, we presume that he was hearing from Jamie Dimon and Bill Acker and all of these others, high-level investors, hedge fund guys who were saying, maybe this isn't the way forward, President.
Yeah, because we did hear Bill Ackman earlier in the week basically calling for a 90-day pause. But I must also say, earlier I spoke to John Burnett, first vice chairman of the New York State Republican Party, who told me there was always going to be some friction and volatility in the short term. But ultimately, people want to invest in the U.S.
I would bet on President Trump. But that aside, I think people should actually look at the divestment and the speed to which companies make their decisions to diversify their supply chains and their operations outside of China. I don't see countries leaving America. I see countries investing into America. I don't see people, or I should say countries, companies investing into China.
Well, Donald Trump is actually speaking right now, so we're going to see exactly what he's saying. We're going to take a bit of that. So if you just stand by, Jennifer and Michael, let's hear what the president has to say.
One of those things I don't know quite. They're proud people. And President Xi's a proud man. I know him very well, and they don't know quite how to go about it, but they'll figure it out. They're in the process of figuring it out, but they want to make a deal. And we have many other countries, as you know, many more than 75, and they all want to come, and they want to come here, or they'll go to Commerce, or they'll go to Treasury. We have our great senators here and congressmen. They'll call John, they'll do somebody, they'll go through somebody, but they're all calling, how do we do this? They all want to make a deal. Somebody had to do what we did, and I did a 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate, because I told them if you retaliate, we're going to double it. And that's what I did with China, because they did retaliate. So we'll see how it all works out. I think it's going to work out amazing. I think that our country is going to be at the end of a year or shorter, but I think we're going to have something that nobody would have dreamt possible. A man like Roger Penske, I don't want to get him in trouble with China, so I won't, but he would know that someday you have to cut the bow and you have to do what you have to do, right, Roger? And that's what I did, and I'm very happy to have done it.
Mr. President, was there anyone... the Prime Minister of Greece just told Breitbart's Matt Boyle that he thinks absolutely the European Union and the United States could work out a trade deal that's win-win and, quote, mutually beneficial to both sides. I agree. What do you think about the Prime Minister's comments, and do you think a deal could be struck with the European Union?
First of all, I know him. He's a good man, and I appreciate his comments. Yeah, a deal could be made with every one of them. A deal's going to be made with China. A deal's going to be made with every one of them. And there'll be fair deals. I just want fair. They will be fair deals for everybody. But they weren't fair to the United States. They were sucking us dry, and you can't do that. You know, we have $36 trillion of debt for a reason. We don't have it there for fun. They have it for a reason. And people took advantage of our country, and they ripped us off for decades. I've been thinking about this for decades. If you ever saw me on television, I was young like these guys. And it was the good old days, I'll tell you, Roger. But I was like these guys, young, and I was talking about it. Nothing changed, and nothing was done about it. Then I did it. In my first term, I did it, and did it well. We took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China and others, and I started the process, but then we had to fix up from the COVID mess caused by China. We had to fix up from that, and we did a good job of doing it. And when we handed back the reins after a rigged election, and when we handed back the reins, the stock market was higher than it was before COVID coming in. So, you know, we did a great job, but we didn't have time to do the big thing, which we're doing now. And it's, you know, it's like a patient is sick, you have to do surgery. Patient is very, very sick. And Joe Biden handed us over a country that was in very serious trouble, economically and in every other way. They let China run away with things. They let other countries run away with things. And maybe worst of all, in a certain way, is what they did at the border. We had people pouring into our country by the millions. Many of them were murderers and drug lords and thieves and people from prisons from all over the world. And there were people from mental institutions, insane asylums. They were taking their mentally insane and they were dumping them into our country. And I'll tell you, Tom Homan and Kristi Noem are doing a fantastic job in removing them. And now the courts, the Supreme Court just gave us numerous good rulings where we have to be able to get them out. You had other judges trying to take over the system. And think of it, they take over, they want these people coming back, Tren de Aragua from Venezuela, the Venezuela jails that cut off the fingers of a man in Colorado. They cut off his fingers because he called the police looking for help. They said, "Did you call the police?" He said, "Yes, I did." "Put your hand down," and they cut off the fingers. This is what they want to bring these people back now. And I want to thank the president of El Salvador for the job he's done, because that is...
So, Michael and Jennifer, there we are, President Donald Trump. I'm not sure where he's speaking. It looks like in front of the White House, completely resolute. He believes in everything that he's done. He says that America's going to be amazing. He's looking for these deals. What did you make of that?
Well, apart from some of the moments where he went a bit off tangent there, and a bit of backslapping, but yeah, I think he's basically doubling down what he's said, you know, previously, that we're going to target China. I mean, yes, we're going to give some of these other countries going to get some sort of temporary reprieve, but I think maybe was this his plan all along, to kind of double down on China, and I think that means that this tit-for-tat trade war between two of the biggest world economies isn't going anywhere. I mean, Michael, what do you think of some of the comments there?
So there was so much to unpack there.
Yeah.
The first thing I wanted to do, and I started to do it, and there were too many, is to count the number of I's. And then he was going from everybody who took advantage of us. He's been talking about this for decades. He talked about all the young people around him, talked about the COVID mess, also blamed that on China, talked about the rigged elections, and then he talked about the big thing, and I guess this is the big thing for him, right? And this is something that I think has been at his core for decades, which, you know, he's been quoted as saying that the word tariffs is one of his most favorite words, right? It's God, it's religion, it's love, it's tariffs, in that order. And so this is the big thing for Donald Trump, but it was almost, it's a stream of consciousness. And I think it's one of the things that attracts a lot of his supporters to him, is that he thinks it, he says it. And so many of us can relate to that.
He's got an honesty about him in a lot of ways. You know, it's kind of that he says it as he feels it. And that's quite unusual for politicians, really.
And of course, he's not a politician. And he would say he's not. He only came into this quite late in his life. And he had never held elected office before being the president of the United States. So there is that everyman appeal. I don't know how a billionaire can have that everyman appeal, but he does have it with his core audience.
She's just so uncensored. I mean, he's a journalist dream, really.
Yes,
Really.
definitely.
But very interesting comments there. I think obviously he wants to double down, like I said, of just what he wants of all his intentions all along about, like you said, about the tariffs has always been something very important to him. But he has also mentioned in recent weeks that he wants longevity, and he is considering a third term, so he's thinking long term now. So I think maybe that's where some of those comments come to.
But I also thought one word stood out to me, and that fair deals. He says they want fair deals. And I thought you said earlier, is this the era of flexibility for Donald Trump? And maybe this is a sign that he's looking to be fair and flexible, got the conversation on tariffs, you know, started, and now he's kind of rolling back a little bit.
But what would have been so much nicer is if he had laid out a strategy. He had come forward, addressed the nation, talked about what it is that he's trying to achieve. Like the economists and the analysts for days have been saying, what's the end game? Is it to get everybody to come to the table and kiss the ring? Or is it for the tariffs, and that's the most important thing? And I think that why he's probably not a good politician is because politicians need to be consistent. They need to be manipulated a little bit by their PR people, and they need to listen to the people around him. And this is one of the accusations that gets leveled against him, is that he doesn't listen to the people around him.
No, and that leads to mixed messages, which leads to market volatility, as we've seen. So
yeah, and uncertainty. Well, stay right there, because we're going to have a look at the UK. So we're going to do a little bit of a gear shift. So turning to the UK now, and the US media giant Comcast has announced the first Universal theme park in Europe will be built in the UK. Universal estimates that 476-acre complex in Bedford could attract 8.5 million visitors in the first year. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said the multi-billion-pound investment by the company firmly puts the country on the global stage. Here's what he had to say a little bit earlier today.
So this will drive growth here and across the country. Higher tourism, improved transport links, and billions of investment. And, you know, people said to me, government will be a roller coaster, and I can testify to that. I don't think this is quite what they meant. But look, this is our plan for change in action, bringing investment, bringing opportunity, growth, jobs, and of course joy to Britain. And
so Keir Starmer, he's even made a joke. He's very happy today about this, isn't he? Championing all the news. What are your thoughts on the theme park opening?
Well, finally, a bit of a bright spot for British economy. It's not been the best time, and it's obviously on the back of the tariffs which have just been talked about. But, you know, theme park, it would be this is the Universal theme park is going to be one of the largest in Europe, I think, and it's certainly the largest in the UK. It's going to bring, it's expected to bring lots of tourism and revenue to the UK. I think the figure was banded around about something like £50 billion. 28,000 jobs, which is incredible, and you know all the revenue that comes with that. So I think it's nice to have some kind of positive news come out of the UK today after all these tariffs.
Yeah, absolutely. What are your thoughts? Are you a theme park man?
I'm not a theme park man, and I am quite comfortable saying that, quite proud of that fact. But I would also say this, that I think what the UK, it's interesting that it happened today, because I think it was the perfect example of how interconnected we are. And the reason I say that is because when you look at a theme park, you know, this is coming from America. And if you look at what Universal has specifically in Florida, you know, you have Harry Potter rides, for instance, and Harry Potter attractions. And Harry Potter's, of course, from the UK. And yet you have the best of America, which is to commercialize something, and you have one of the best series of books in the last few decades from the UK, and it's coming together. And this is, I think, a great analogy that shows just how interconnected we all are. And it doesn't matter if it's Bollywood or if it's Taylor Swift. We all recognize what it is that we all share in common. And I think because this news is happening, and I agree with you, it's wonderful news for the UK, for the local economy especially, and I think it's a great opportunity for people in the UK to maybe stop and appreciate that this is a good day here as well as in Washington because of the pause.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And also, Luton Airport isn't too far away from where this big theme park's going to be built. And they have announced that they want to expand Luton Airport. So it seems like the UK government is really moving forward in its growth plan. That's something the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has talked about extensively. So maybe we could see the UK entering a bright spot. And obviously, Trump's tariffs have had an effect on the UK, Michael, to some degree, lesser so, 10%, than what we saw in the European Union. But did you think the UK probably thought they were going to get a better deal than anyone else because they've got this special relationship with the United States?
So I think that they were optimistic, but I think a lot of countries were optimistic. A lot of countries were, of course, completely caught off guard. It didn't matter if you were penguins or if you were in the UK, you were going to get caught up in this. And I think, again, going back to the idea of globalization and how it works, this is something that the U.S. helped create right after the Second World War. And it's been 80 years. It's been so successful because we're all dependent upon each other. And it might not be what economists always talk about, but from that humanistic point of view, I think that we all have to appreciate that I'm better if you're better. Even though we're in different countries, I think that that has a real impact on economies local and global.
Jennifer, you're actually from the UK. Yeah, not from Bedford, but
a little further north.
A little bit further north. What do you think about this for the UK? Because I was just trying to think of some theme parks that we've got there. I'm not a theme
Alton
park
Towers,
person. Alton Towers,
yeah.
And they're such major attractions. Do you think this is like a really good, bright spot? And how do you think family and friends are feeling about it?
Well, I am a thrill seeker, so I'm quite excited to go back to the UK in 2031 when it's going to be built. I'll go on it. Maybe look here in the Middle East, where we are now. I mean, we've got huge, theme parks being developed here, more in the works. We've got, Yas Waterworld and Ferrari Park, and these are huge draws for countries, like this. So I think it is great news. I mean, it seems like, it's a theme park, but I mean, when you talk about that level of jobs, that level of injection to the economy, and then what it does to the, like you said, to the airport, what it does to the infrastructure around it. I mean, so I just think it has got many untold benefits, really. But like you said, very interesting day to announce it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just stay right there. We're going to look at some other stories of the day, and then I'll be right back with you. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the headlines today. A spokesperson from Russia's foreign ministry has said bombing Iran won't pave the way to peace. They also said Moscow hoped that talks between the US and Iran may help to avoid a crisis, adding the world is growing tired of endless threats against Iran. A US judge has ordered the Trump administration to restore the Associated Press's access to presidential events. It comes after the White House blocked the news agency during a dispute over the term Gulf of America. The judge said the administration's reaction on AP journalists was contrary to the First Amendment, which guarantees freedom of speech. Now, from tomorrow, British passport prices will see a 7% rise, with an online application jumping up by £6 to a total of £94.50. The government says part of the cost goes towards funding passport control and border officers and consular support overseas, including lost or stolen passports. And King Charles has become the first UK monarch to address both houses of the Italian Parliament in Rome. His Majesty received a long-standing ovation as he gave a speech on the third day of a state visit to Italy. He warned that countries like the UK and Italy need to stand together in such troubled times. Earlier today, he also met with the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni for the very first time. Now, the Kremlin has declined to comment on claims that two Chinese men are fighting for Russia in eastern Ukraine. Yesterday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky claimed forces had captured the pair and posted a video on X. Earlier, I spoke to former US diplomat Donald Jensen, who told me the Chinese have always maintained neutrality, but he believes they are playing both sides of the fence.
My own contacts in Kiev, I would say, assure me that there are many more Chinese there than just the two that President Zelensky mentioned today. He's trying to downplay the story, in my view, because the Ukrainians depend on Chinese technology for drone technology systems and weapons like that. So he's trying to keep it in bounds while raising the white flag. So China, again, is trying to play both sides of the fence, and it's something that people increasingly are not willing to accept.
So, Michael, what did you make of that? I thought that was a really interesting chat I had earlier with Donald Jensen. Could there be more than just Chinese nationals fighting on Russia's behalf, do we think?
Definitely. And the reason I say that is just what he said, where they're playing both sides of the fence. Isn't that what geopolitics is all about? And I think when he also said that they are usually neutral, I would say that most countries are neutral. They'll say they're neutral until they're caught doing something they're not supposed to be doing. And I think that when you have the 11,000 North Koreans who are fighting with the Russians, there's no reason to think that there aren't others. I think that they could be sanctioned as well as unsanctioned. The North Koreans were definitely sanctioned. That was an agreement that the North Korean leader and Russia had decided upon. But I also believe that there are definite reasons to think that when you have 70 nationalities fighting on the Ukrainian side, why would you not also have a few fighting on the Russian side?
Yeah, and Jennifer, obviously we heard a lot about a ceasefire deal between Russia and Ukraine. Obviously we saw that bust up in the Oval Office between Trump and Zelensky. It seems to have gone a little bit quiet. What's happening on that front?
Yes, well, we haven't seen the 24-hour deal that President Trump had promised. We had seen some optimism this year when there was obviously some sort of ceasefire accords when it came to attacking energy infrastructure, but that as we've seen, hasn't also held. I think, like Michael said, if you've got, rumours of Chinese nationals fighting, and I think Zelensky was very careful on his Telegram post saying that that was Russia was kind of recruiting the Chinese rather than blaming any direct Chinese national involvement. But you said you've also got the 11,000 North Korean troops. After 3 years, this doesn't show to me that Russia has got any sign of wanting to end this war. It looks like it's got no sign of abating.
But earlier in my conversation with Donald Jensen, who I was speaking to, he said one of the reasons that this could almost be embarrassing for Russia is the fact that there is a high count of men that they are losing during this war. And this is something we don't always discuss. They've obviously tried to enforce conscription, but I think it once again highlights the vulnerabilities that these countries are going through. Obviously, we know Ukraine is calling for weapons, and now Russia seems to be in a almost difficult position.
I think so, because the world has changed so much from, say, the Vietnam War in the 60s and 70s that the U.S. was embarking upon. And I think nowadays what you have to understand is that people are aware of what everybody else is going through around the world. And there were some real issues in the early days of the war when things started to go a little bit south for the Russians. And a lot of young Russian men were fleeing the country. And there were a lot of people who were not 100% behind this war. Much like there were not a lot of people behind Trump's tariff initiative, a lot of people were not supportive of President Putin and what he was doing in the Ukraine. And this idea that you have so many people who are still struggling with what it is that they're fighting for and when is the end going to come, I think leaves a lot of young men struggling with, is this something that I want to fight for?
Yeah, absolutely. And one reason you mentioned to me that on Telegram, Volodymyr Zelensky seemed quite conservative about these Chinese soldiers that apparently were captured. Do you think one of the reasons would be because they also treading the fence? We know that they import a lot from China. There's obviously weapons being made, a minerals deal they're trying to reach with the US. It all seems to be fine lines at the moment.
It does. I mean, it was, I'm trying to use the right words, but he was very, very careful with his wording. It was definitely not trying to anger China in any way. It seemed he'd taken a great deal of thought to say, this was Russia recruiting China. I don't know. I think maybe that more evidence needs to come out. Maybe there's other cards he's holding to his chest, but I don't know. What do you think, Michael?
So I think that he definitely is walking a fine line, and he has to. But again, when we're talking about tariffs and the globalization of the world, why is it that these countries that are in the midst of a 3-year war would not be relying on so many other players who are behind the scenes? It makes perfect sense. There's accusations that the Russians are using Iranian drones, for instance. And it goes on and on and on. I mean, where are all the weapons that the Ukrainians are using coming from? Of course, we know they're coming from the States. And up until recently, so much of the intel was also coming from the States. I wouldn't say it's a proxy war, but you do have so many other players in this game that are behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's something that we'll watch and see how the ceasefire deal can ever be reached and how negotiations keep on going. But stay there for a moment. At least 130 people have been killed and more than 150 are injured after a roof collapsed at a nightclub in the Dominican Republic. Hundreds of rescuers are still searching for survivors at the Jet Set nightclub. Our correspondent, Sarah Firth, has the latest.
A country in mourning. The president of the Dominican Republic today visiting the scene of the nightclub roof collapse in Santo Domingo that has killed many and injured many more. People are still being pulled from the rubble and rushed to nearby hospitals. Emergency officials say more than 250 people have been rescued so far. The collapse happened at the Jet Set nightclub in the capital in the early hours of Tuesday. Rescue teams have been working through the night at the site, trying to find survivors. According to officials, emergency crews have sought heavier equipment to speed up the rescue process.
In the case of the rescue intervention we are currently carrying out, the operation chief is intervening in 5 locations, and we are trying to intervene more quickly in 3.
And every moment counts, with families of those caught in the disaster anxiously checking lists containing the names of those rescued. The impact of this tragedy written on their faces. Among the dead, a provincial governor and former Major League Baseball pitcher Octavio Dotel. The 51-year-old died on the way to hospital after being pulled from the debris. Locals have been donating blood to help treat those at the hospitals nearby, doing whatever they can to help. The well-known club, once the site of dancing, music and live performances, now the site of an ongoing rescue effort and a tragedy that has left the country grieving. Sarah Firth, Al Arabiya News.
Let's take a look at the top business news now. Tesla will start selling cars in Saudi Arabia on Thursday ahead of Donald Trump's expected visit to Riyadh. Tesla's CEO Elon Musk's relationship with Riyadh has improved since 2018. The Chinese firm Luxshare, which supplies Apple, is looking to shift more production outside of the country, including to the US, as they respond to President Donald Trump's tariffs. The remarks by the company in China, which assembles iPhones and makes AirPods, is a rare insight into discussions by companies as tariffs do take effect. Turning to the sports news now, and Arsenal's Declan Rice has never scored a free kick in his personal career, but that all changed on Tuesday. After 339 games, he scored 2 free kicks to seal a sensational 3-0 win for Arsenal over Real Madrid in the Champions League quarter-final first leg at the Emirates Stadium. And the legendary tennis player Billie Jean King has received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. King, who is 81 years old, is the first woman to be given the honor in the new sports entertainment category. The Hollywood Walk of Fame was previously reserved for stars of cinema, television, radio, theatre, and, of course, music. And finally, we've reached that point in the show where Michael and Jennifer, you've come up with some quirky stories that we're going to talk about now. Michael, your story first. I don't know where to really start with this. Controversial, do you think? Controversial skinny restaurant.
I vote not controversial, but I think I would lose that if we actually went to the polls. So it's the smaller the gap, the bigger the reduction. That's their slogan. So this is a restaurant in Chiang Mai, which is in the north of Thailand. And their policy is, well, their offer, I shouldn't say their policy, their offer is there are 5 options. You could get no discount, a 5% discount, 10, 15, or 20. If you are incredibly skinny, you can fit through the bars that allow you to get the 20% discount. Now, some are saying they're fat shaming. I don't agree with that. I understand that argument, but I don't agree with that.
When I was just looking at it, we had it on the screen just a minute ago, and it is in Thailand, of course, as you said. Do you not just think this is a bit of a tourist attraction? Like, I would now go to that restaurant to see how much discount I could get and which poles I could fit through, no?
Yeah, very interesting marketing ploy, but I do think it is controversial. I mean, I find it offensive going to a restaurant with there's calories listed on the menu, let alone a gateway you have to go to see what discount you qualify for. I mean, what's next?
But it's not really about the food, is it now? It's become sort of a bit of an attraction. I know it's maybe a little bit offensive, but at the same time, I would be like, I'm probably with you a little bit more. Like Michael's, bit of a tourist attraction in Thailand, are great at doing that.
It's a great marketing ploy. We're all talking about it.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would fit through the 20% discount just because of my head. And so I don't think that that's fat shaming. I just think that's the genetics.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I've never, ever measured the size of my head, but I might not go through it either. And Jennifer, you had such a good story, and it brings back lots of memories for me of Boris Johnson. Wow. I know. He was attacked by an ostrich. Oh, what happened?
Well, he was taking his young son to a wildlife park, I think, in Texas. And I think, it was one of those drive-through ones where you can, open the window, feed their birds. I think he was kind of egged on by his son to kind of feed the ostrich and kind of darted in and like it almost headbutted him. I think he used some choice language and a very British term like crikey and then kind of sped off. Yeah. I think my favourite point about this story really was some very funny memes that went around after this, because they were kind of put a picture of the ostrich and put a picture of Boris Johnson next to it, and they both kind of had the same unfortunate shock of blonde hair. But yeah, it just goes to show that even Boris Johnson's partner can show him up on social media.
Yeah, exactly. It was Carrie, his wife, wasn't it, who had taken...
Too funny to miss. Exactly.
Yeah. Any wild animal stories?
Not for me, not today. Well, I could think of when I was younger, we owned a fat dog. Oh. But maybe I won't talk about the fat shaming aspect.
No, we can't.
I wouldn't want to shame the poor fellow.
But it is so interesting because, animals are so unpredictable, and we know this. And, we always go through these wildlife parks. You never really know what can happen, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
That's how I would have kept my window up.
What have you? Oh, I don't know. A monkey stole me once. And
I've had a monkey on a car.
Yeah, monkeys
are cute.
Yeah, monkeys are cute, but also they can be naughty.
Yes, I was just going to say, they're usually doing something that's naughty in front of you.
That's why I like them.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for both joining me. I really enjoyed it. That was media strategist and former editor-in-chief Michael-Jabri Pickett and Al Arabiya journalist Jennifer Bell. Here's a reminder of our top stories. The dollar strengthens as President Trump announces a 90-day pause on some tariffs except for China, who will now be raised to 125%. Trump's decision comes as China increased its tariff on US goods to 84%. And 134 people have been killed after a roof collapses at a nightclub in the Dominican Republic. And that's all from us on W News Extra. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. G&T with Tom Burgess-Watson is coming up next, followed by special interviews with the Syrian Olympic swimmer. Goodbye.